Hello owners, and welcome to the Peanut Butter Jelly Time Week in Review, our first video review. So let's see how we do with this one. I'm going to start right out with the game of the week. Game of the week was Cats with Guns versus Big Daddy. Cats opened up with a decisive 48-point victory over a new guy, not so Big Daddy. The final score of 126-78. The big story here was the Cats' fourth-round pick, Michael Turner, who turned in a record-breaking 40-point game. Turner rushed for an Atlanta single-game rushing record, 220 yards and 2 touchdowns. The Cats had 6 in double digits total. In addition to Turner, they got big games from Gore, who had 20 points on 96 yards rushing and 55 receiving yards plus a touchdown, and 3 players with 14 points. Reggie Wayne, the Bengals D, and some dude named Anthony Fasano, the tight end from Miami. Do I smell some inside info? Hey, I got a touchdown. I was just making my spaghetti sauce. Nice pickup by the Cats. Not to be lost in this was the debut of Brett Favre in the Jets. He threw for 194 yards and 2 touchdowns. As for Big Daddy, well, welcome to the Big Boys League. Although he was stomped on, he still had 4 in double digits. Romo had 18. The Brady-less Randy Moss had 17. More on that later. Ernest Graham had 11, and the Bears D looked good versus a rusty Colts team, and they turned in 20 points in the losing effort. The only other 100-point team this week was the Pilot Lights. They won 101-58 over the Monkeys. The Pilot Lights scored big in an unbalanced attack. 75 of the 101 points came from 3 players. Drew Brees had 31 on 343 yards passing and 3 touchdowns. Marion Barber had 22 as he picked up where he left off last year, abusing the Browns for 80 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. And the Cardinal D had 22, getting 5 turnovers in their game. Speaking of picking up where they left off, the Monkeys found themselves on the losing end of the score for the 15th out of 17 games. The Monkeys had 3 in double digits, led by Kurt Warner with 13. LT and Gates each had 10. The Monkeys apparently love the Chargers, as they also have the Charger D. By all accounts, a top D going into our draft. Number 1 by ESPN, top 5 by CBS. But only put up 5 points this week, and it gets worse. Sean Merriman has now changed his mind and has decided to have his season-ending surgery, so they'll be without Sean Merriman for the year. There were a couple of close games this week. Mr. Bill's gang topped Master Killer 84-78. And the Sheboygan Headbangers were the first to dent the champ's crown with an 83-77 win. And let's take a closer look at those games. It was back and forth in the Mr. Bill and Master Killer game, with both teams put 3 in double digits. Mr. Bill ended up on top with his number 1 pick, Brian Westbrook, rushing for 91 yards and a touchdown, and added a receiving touchdown as well. Eli had 12 points way back on last Thursday, and in one of the most surprising games of the week, the Ravens D came up big, putting 18 points on the board as they held down the Bengals. Big players for Master Killers were Kitna with 20, the Steelers D with 19, and the guy catching balls for Eli, Plexico Burris, had 15. The Chili Dogs opened up their 2008 title defense on the wrong end of the 83-77 game with the Sheboygan Headbangers. The Headbangers had 5 players in double digits, led by 3 players with 14. Marshawn Lynch, T.O., and the Pats D all turned in 14-point days. Brandon Jacobs looked good with 116 yards rushing for 13 points. No TD there, though. And Kellen Winslow had 10. The Champs had 4 in double digits, led by Reggie Bush, who had 51 on the ground and 112 yards through the air, including that diving touchdown for 24 points. Rusty Peyton Manning still had a respectable 16 with 257 passing yards and a TD. And Calvin Johnson had 12 with 107 yards receiving. Possibly a change indeed coming along for the Chili Dogs, as their starter Detroit compiled exactly 1 point, while the bench Titans D had 25 points. Next up, we saw Loose Cannons turn the Rockers into more of a soft jazz quartet. The Cannons blasted the Rockers 96-69. Loose Cannons put 5 players in double digits, and that was led by Willie Parker. Apparently, Willie didn't get the memo that he was washed up with Richard Mendenhall breathing down his neck. The 5th round pick for the Cannons responded with 138 yards rushing and 3 touchdowns, already topping his total touchdown output for last year by 33%. Also scoring big for Loose Cannon were Andre Johnson with 13 on 112 yards receiving, Matt Hasselbeck, who managed 11 points with receivers named Larry, Moe, and Curly, and 11 points from the Giant D. Rounding out double digits was Roy Williams with 10 points. It wasn't all bad for the Rockers. He had 3 in double digits. The Rockers got great numbers from the ground game. Thomas Jones had 18 on 101 yards and a touchdown. And Adrian Peterson had 19 on 103 rushing yards, 1 touchdown, and he threw in 11 receiving yards just for fun. The other 5 starters unfortunately compiled a terrible 16 points combined, 6 total coming from their receivers. Braylon Edwards, 1, and Rowdy Roddy White with 5. To add insult to injury, the always due for a breakout year, Nate Burleson now is simply broke and out for the season with a knee injury. So let's go to Coach Saunders for some comments on this week's drubbing by Loose Cannon. Well, like we said, it wasn't all bad. We had great games for anyone with a back. A quarterback, a running back, they were all great. We got the great game out of Ben Roethlisberger, who everyone said I reached for. He gave me 16 points in just 3 quarters. Running backs were awesome. My ground game was tough. Our receivers were simply doo-doo time spectacular. They were terrible. We got Brandon Marshall coming back next week, so hopefully we can pick up a little bit of something there. And our total domination of this league will start in week 2. Early lines show the Rockers as the high scorer of week 2, 2 weeks in a row. Let's see if we can live up to that. Back to you. Whatever you say, Coach. We'll take that with a grain of salt. Alright, so we got last but not least, we have Super Simon doing what he almost always does and wins. This year starting off with a 79-55 win over the Pitons. This was a game of the quarterbacks. Simon, who had Brady last year, got Brady-like numbers from his quarterback this year, Donovan McNabb. McNabb had 34 points on a league-leading 361 yards passing and 3 touchdowns to guys slightly better than Larry, Moe, and Curly over in Seattle. Rookie Kevin Smith had 13 points on 80 total yards and a touchdown. And his 3rd double-digit point output came from the Cowboys D with 11. On the other side of the quarterback coin is the Pitons, the team who took Brady this year. Brady promptly delivered 3 points on 76 yards passing and a season-ending knee injury. Only one Piton reached double digits, and that was Bears rookie 7th round draft choice, Matt Forte. Forte ran all over the supposed vaunted Colts D for 123 yards and a touchdown, 18 through the air, just for good note. And while we're trying to look for a silver lining for the Pitons, his bench outscored all other benches. They totaled 73 points. 19 of that coming from another washed-up Steeler, somebody named Hines Ward. Somebody needs to check that fax machine in Pittsburgh. Real quick, a pick'em update. Chili Dogs, Rockers, Pitons, Headbangers all had 3 wins this week. Cats and the Pilot Lights had 2. The Monkeys had 1. And Big Daddy forgot to even pick his teams. So see what you can do about that. That's up and running. You can pick your teams anytime from here on out. Hopefully I'm under 10 minutes. And I hope you guys enjoyed that. Maybe we'll do some other interviews and try and splice that in there. Make some phone calls during it to get some other coaches in there. And we'll have some fun with that this year. So from Peanut Butter Jelly Time League headquarters, over and out.